The moment I stepped into my brother's dining room, my sister-in-law looked up from arranging the plates and smiled so warmly that anyone watching would have believed I had always been welcome there. Then she said, "Emily, did you already eat before coming?" The question sounded ordinary. Too ordinary. I am Emily Carter, 46 years old, and after spending 22 years building one of the most respected accounting firms in our county, I had learned that the most dangerous questions were often the quietest ones. I smiled back. "No, I came straight from work." "So?" She glanced toward the kitchen for barely half a second. "I didn't know you'd be joining us today." My brother Daniel frowned. "I told you yesterday." She laughed softly. "You know me, I forget things." Everyone accepted the explanation. Everyone except me. Because I had already noticed something strange. There were 6 dinner plates on the table. There were 6 people in the house. Yet only 5 lunches had been served. Nobody mentioned the missing one. Nobody asked where mine was. Nobody even looked surprised. That was the exact moment I realized something important. But this story does not start here. Welcome back to Revenge Cold Stories. Drop your first name and your city in the comments and subscribe before we go any further. To understand why a missing lunch mattered so much, you have to understand what food meant inside our family. It was never just food. It was belonging. Growing up, we never had much money. Our father worked as a mechanic for 33 years. Our mother cleaned classrooms at the local elementary school before sunrise every weekday. Together they earned enough to survive. Not enough to feel comfortable. When I was 8 years old, there was one winter that still lives inside my memory, more clearly than birthdays or Christmas mornings. Mother made a large pot of vegetable soup every Sunday. She divided it carefully. Exactly 7 containers. 1 for every evening of the week. Nobody was allowed a second bowl. Not because she wanted to be strict. Because there simply wasn't enough. One evening, Daniel accidentally dropped his container onto the kitchen floor. He cried harder than I'd ever seen. Mother didn't scold him. She quietly divided her own portion in half and shared it with him. Then she told me something that stayed with me forever. "Emily, families don't show love during celebrations. They show it when something is missing." I believed those words for decades. I built my entire adult life around them. School became my escape. While most classmates spent weekends at football games or shopping malls, I spent Saturdays in the public library. By 16, I had already completed advanced accounting courses offered by the community college. At 22, I graduated with honors. At 26, I became a certified public accountant. At 31, I opened my own accounting practice with exactly 3 clients. A retired teacher. A bakery. A plumbing company. Nothing glamorous. Just honest work. I kept records by hand because I couldn't afford expensive software. For nearly 4 years, I never took a vacation. Not one. Eventually, those 3 clients became 30. 30 became 100. 100 became over 400 active business accounts. Last year, our firm processed nearly $68 million in business transactions for clients across 3 counties. People often assume success changes everything. Sometimes it doesn't. Inside my own family, I remained exactly who I had always been. Quiet Emily. Reliable Emily. The sister who could always solve everyone else's problems. Never the woman whose achievements deserved celebration. Daniel was 2 years older than me. Growing up, everyone believed he would become the successful one. He was athletic, confident, comfortable speaking in front of crowds. Teachers adored him. Neighbors admired him. When he married Rachel 20 years ago, everyone said they were the perfect couple. Rachel possessed something difficult to describe. She rarely raised her voice. Rarely argued openly. She preferred subtle control. If someone left her house feeling uncomfortable, they often couldn't explain why. She believed appearances mattered more than intentions. Matching furniture, perfect family photographs, carefully planned holiday dinners, polite conversations. Everything looked beautiful, as long as nobody questioned her decisions. She wasn't cruel. Not in obvious ways. She simply believed families required order. And in her mind, order meant everyone knowing exactly where they belonged. She often decided those places herself. Daniel didn't notice. Or perhaps noticing would have required uncomfortable conversations he wasn't prepared to have. Their daughter Lily was 14. Bright, observant, the kind of child who listened more than she spoke. She inherited Daniel's kindness, but also possessed a remarkable honesty that neither parent fully appreciated. Children often assume adults don't notice them. Adults make the opposite mistake. They assume children don't notice them. Lily noticed everything. Every whispered conversation. Every awkward silence. Every fake smile. Looking back now, I think she understood the family long before any of us admitted what we had become. The Sunday lunches began after our parents passed away. Mother died first. Father followed 18 months later. Daniel suggested we continue gathering every second Sunday. "It'll keep us close," he said. At first it truly did. We laughed, shared stories, remembered our parents. But slowly something shifted. Rachel became responsible for hosting. Then for deciding the menu. Then for deciding invitations. Then seating arrangements. Without announcing it, she became the quiet manager of every family gathering. Most people accepted that naturally, including me. Until little things started happening. My favorite chair was suddenly reserved. Desserts occasionally ran out before reaching me. Family photos somehow began without anyone calling my name. If I arrived 5 minutes late, everyone had already started eating. Individually, these moments seemed meaningless. Together they formed a pattern. Not dramatic enough to confront. Too consistent to ignore. Each incident allowed plausible explanations. "Oh, I forgot. There weren't enough chairs. I thought you weren't coming. It's only cake. It's just lunch." Individually, they meant nothing. Collectively, they said something else. "You are optional." I told myself I was imagining it. After all, I spent my professional life looking for patterns inside financial records. Perhaps I was doing the same thing inside relationships. Perhaps numbers had made me suspicious. So I ignored the feeling. For almost 3 years. During that time, my business continued expanding. We hired 12 additional employees. Moved into a renovated brick office downtown. Introduced scholarship programs for accounting students. Donated nearly $40,000 to local educational charities. None of that mattered during family lunches. There I remained simply Daniel's younger sister. Rachel rarely asked about work. If someone else brought it up, she'd quickly change the topic. Instead, she'd ask about recipes, gardening, neighborhood gossip, safe subject. Once, Daniel proudly told everyone my firm had won a Regional Business Excellence Award. Rachel smiled politely. Then she turned toward another guest. "Has anyone tried the potato salad?" The conversation disappeared. Tiny moments. Easy to dismiss. Until the afternoon, everything changed. That Sunday, I finished meeting a client whose restaurant had nearly gone bankrupt after an employee stole inventory for 11 months. We spent 4 hours rebuilding his financial controls. By the time I reached Daniel's house, I was exhausted. Rachel welcomed me with unusual warmth, which immediately made me cautious. People rarely change lifelong habits overnight. I placed a homemade apple pie on the kitchen counter. She thanked me enthusiastically, then quietly carried it into another room. We never ate it. Instead, she served a chocolate cake purchased from a local bakery. Another tiny detail. Another small message. Your contribution isn't needed. Lunch began. Or rather, lunch began for everyone except me. Rachel entered carrying a large tray. She placed one plate before Daniel, one before Lily, one before herself, one before Daniel's friend Mark, one before Mark's wife Susan. Then she looked around theatrically. Oh, I completely forgot. Everyone waited. There isn't another serving. Silence. I'm so embarrassed. She covered her mouth dramatically. I must have miscounted. Daniel looked confused. What happened to the extra portion? I honestly don't know. She opened the refrigerator, closed it, opened a cabinet, looked inside the oven, performed the entire search almost like an actress who already knew the ending of the play. I'm so sorry, Emily. There are leftovers somewhere. Maybe. Or I can make you toast. Toast? While everyone else enjoyed roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, vegetables, homemade bread and dessert. Nobody spoke. Not because they agreed. Because awkwardness makes decent people temporarily silent. I looked around the table. Then at Lily. She wasn't eating. She kept staring toward the hallway. Toward the laundry room. Interesting. Children reveal secrets with their eyes long before they reveal them with words. I smiled gently. Lily. She looked up immediately. Would you help your aunt for just a minute? Rachel answered before Lily could. She's eating. It'll only take a moment. Lily nodded. Okay. We walked together toward the hallway. Rachel watched us carefully. Far more carefully than someone worried only about missing food should have. The moment we reached the hallway, I lowered my voice. Lily. She looked nervous. Not guilty. Just uncomfortable. I remembered something from years of interviewing employees during fraud investigations. Innocent people worry about saying the wrong thing. Guilty people worry about hiding the right thing. Lily, I said softly, do you remember last month when I couldn't find the $200 I accidentally left inside my notebook after helping your dad organize his taxes? Her eyes widened. Oh, I thought you knew. Knew what? She hesitated. Then looked toward the laundry room. Mom put the money inside the blue cookie tin. I stayed silent. Children continue talking when adults don't interrupt. She said if you asked, she'd tell you maybe you lost it. I felt my heartbeat slow instead of speeding up. Professionally, I had learned something important. Truth often arrives quietly. No shouting. No dramatic music. Just simple sentences. Lily continued. And she swallowed. The lunch is in there too. She pointed toward the second refrigerator inside the laundry room. The chicken. The bread. The potatoes. Mom hid your food because she said there wasn't enough for everyone. She stopped, then whispered something that changed the entire afternoon. But she made an extra plate yesterday and told me not to tell anybody. I looked at her for several long seconds. Not because I doubted her. Because I suddenly understood that this had never been about food. It had been about being erased. Quietly, politely, repeatedly, without witnesses noticing. I smiled at Lily. You've done nothing wrong. She looked close to tears. I thought maybe I shouldn't say anything. You told the truth. That is never something to be ashamed of. Together, we walked toward the laundry room. And just before I reached for the refrigerator door, I heard footsteps behind us. Rachel had followed. Rachel stopped so suddenly that the floorboards creaked beneath her shoes. For a fraction of a second, our eyes met. She smiled. It was the same practice smile she wore whenever neighbors visited or church friends complimented her cooking. But this time it arrived half a second too late. "What are you two doing in here?" she asked lightly. Lily looked down at the floor. I answered before she could. "I was just asking Lily something." Rachel folded her arms. "About what?" "The $200. Her smile became smaller. "I don't remember any money." "I do." For several seconds nobody moved. Then I reached for the handle of the second refrigerator. Rachel took one quick step forward. "Emily, that's just where I keep extra groceries." "I'm sure." I opened the refrigerator. There it was. A complete lunch. One plate, covered neatly with plastic wrap. Roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, fresh bread, green beans. Exactly the same meal everyone else was eating. Even the slice of chocolate cake had already been placed onto a small dessert plate. Prepared in advance. Not forgotten. Hidden. The room became perfectly silent. I slowly lifted the plate. It was still warm. Not hot enough to have just been cooked. Warm enough to have been waiting. Waiting for no one. Or perhaps waiting until everyone else had finished. Rachel finally spoke. "I was saving it." "For whom?" She opened her mouth. Closed it. Then tried again. I wasn't sure if Mark wanted seconds. I nodded slowly. "So you prepared a complete plated meal before anyone started eating, because someone might want seconds." She didn't answer. Daniel had reached the hallway by then. "What happened?" He looked from me to Rachel. Then to the plate in my hands. His forehead wrinkled. "I thought there wasn't enough food." Rachel laughed nervously. "There wasn't, I mean." She looked at the plate as though she had never seen it before. "I completely forgot that was in there." "Forgot? Again?" Daniel looked unconvinced. "You forgot an entire meal." "It was busy this morning." "I understand." He spoke quietly. "But you spent almost 2 minutes searching the kitchen." "Zai, you opened the refrigerator. You checked the oven. You looked inside the pantry. You knew this refrigerator existed." Nobody said anything. Lily stood beside me, twisting her fingers together. I gently placed one hand on her shoulder. She looked relieved. Children should never carry adult secrets. Especially secrets they never asked to keep. Rachel suddenly looked toward Lily. "Honey." Lily flinched. Very slightly. Most people wouldn't have noticed. I did. "So," Rachel continued carefully, "what exactly did you tell Aunt Emily?" Lily whispered the truth. Those 2 words landed harder than any accusation. Daniel looked at his daughter. "What truth?" Lily hesitated. I spoke softly. "Only if you want to." She nodded. "Mom made Aunt Emily's plate yesterday." Silence. "And she put it in here this morning." Silence again. "And..." She took a deep breath. "She said not to tell anybody." Daniel slowly turned toward Rachel. "Is that true?" Rachel rubbed both hands together. "It sounds terrible the way she's saying it." "Is it true?" "I only..." "Rachel, I just wanted one peaceful lunch." Daniel blinked. "What does that mean?" Rachel finally sat down on the old laundry chair. For the first time since I'd known her, she looked genuinely tired. "Not defeated. Just exhausted." "You don't understand." "Then explain." She looked at me. "No matter what I do, everyone eventually talks about Emily." I didn't respond. She continued anyway. Someone asks about her business. Someone congratulates her. Someone needs financial advice. Someone thanks her for helping. Then lunch becomes another meeting. Daniel frowned. That's ridiculous. No. Rachel shook her head. You don't notice because you're her brother. She looked toward me again. You walk into every room without trying, and somehow people pay attention. I spend 2 days cooking. I clean. I decorate. I organize everything. But 15 minutes after you arrive, everyone asks Emily questions. There was no anger in her voice now. Only disappointment. I wanted one afternoon where I wasn't competing. I stared at her quietly. Something unexpected happened inside me. The anger I thought I'd feel never came. Instead, I felt sadness. Not for myself. For her. Because she genuinely believed attention was something limited. As though appreciation worked like slices of cake. If one person received more, someone else automatically received less. Daniel sat down opposite her. You hid lunch because of that. I didn't think it would become such a big issue. You intended for Emily to eat toast. Rachel looked away. It was only one meal. I answered gently. No. She looked at me. It wasn't. It was 3 years. She frowned. What? The missing desserts. The family photographs. The conversations that changed whenever someone mentioned my work. The birthday dinner where everyone started eating before I arrived. The Christmas gift exchange where somehow my present disappeared. The anniversary party where my chair was moved to the children's table. Her eyes widened slightly. I noticed every single one. Daniel slowly looked toward his wife. Rachel whispered I didn't. Then stopped. Because she had. Maybe not consciously every single time. But enough times that the pattern had become real. I remembered something Mother once said. Small stones sink boats. Not because one stone is heavy. Because nobody removes them. Mark and Susan quietly entered the hallway. Neither of them interrupted. Neither pretended not to hear. Mark finally cleared his throat. I wondered why the conversations always felt. He searched for the word. All unfinished. Susan nodded. I noticed Emily was usually serving herself last. I thought she preferred it. Rachel covered her face with both hands. Oh God. Nobody mocked her. Nobody yelled. Nobody celebrated. Truth rarely feels victorious. Mostly, it feels heavy. After nearly a minute, Rachel looked at Lily. I'm sorry. Lily remained silent. Then Rachel looked at me. I'm sorry. Again, I didn't answer immediately. Not because I wanted to punish her. Because apologies deserve careful listening. Some are meant to end conversations. Others begin them. I believe you are sorry, I finally said. She looked surprised. But being sorry isn't the difficult part. What is? Understanding why. She lowered her eyes. Daniel quietly asked, did something happen? Rachel laughed bitterly. You remember your cousin Amanda? He nodded. When we were teenagers. She always came first. Better grades. Better clothes. Better college. Better everything. My parents compared us constantly. If Amanda baked cookies, and I should bake pies. If Amanda got an A, and I should get an A+. If someone praised her, and I worked twice as hard. She took a shaky breath. I hated feeling invisible. No one interrupted. So when Emily succeeded, I told myself I wasn't jealous. She searched for words. I wanted one place where I mattered most. My own house. That sentence explained far more than the hidden lunch ever could. It didn't excuse anything, but it explained it. And explanations matter. Because without them, people repeat the same mistakes forever. Daniel leaned back slowly. I never realized. You weren't supposed to. Rachel smiled sadly. I hid it well. I almost smiled myself. No, she looked confused. You hid it quietly. Not well. The room stayed silent. Because everyone suddenly understood the difference. Quiet wounds still leave scars. They simply take longer to notice. Lily walked over to her mother. For a terrifying second I worried she might pull away. Instead, she hugged her. Rachel immediately burst into tears. Real tears. Not dramatic ones. The kind that arrive after pretending for too many years. I'm sorry, she whispered into Lily's hair. I'm so sorry. Daniel closed his eyes briefly. Then stood up. Let's eat. Rachel looked shocked. After this? Yes, because we're still family. But we'll deal with everything else later. He looked toward me. If you're willing. I nodded once. I am. We carried the hidden plate back to the dining table. This time, Daniel placed it in front of me himself. No speeches. No ceremony. Just one simple action. Oddly enough, it felt larger than either of us expected. Because sometimes respect isn't restored through dramatic confrontations. Sometimes, it's restored one place setting at a time. For the first several minutes, nobody spoke very much. Forks touched plates. Glasses clinked softly. Outside, the wind moved through the maple trees, exactly as it had before any of us walked into the laundry room. It struck me how strange life could be. The world almost never paused for personal revelations. Birds continued singing. Cars continued passing by. Neighbors continued mowing their lawns. Meanwhile, inside one ordinary dining room, an entire family was quietly rearranging years of assumptions. Daniel finally cleared his throat. Emily. I looked up. I'm sorry. His voice carried none of the confidence people associated with him. It sounded like the voice of the 16-year-old brother who had once apologized after accidentally breaking my bicycle. I should have noticed. I smiled gently. You weren't trying to hurt me. No, but I wasn't paying attention either. There was a difference. A very important one. Most lasting family pain isn't created by active cruelty. It's created by passive blindness. One person keeps making small cuts. Everyone else keeps saying they don't see any blood. Mark laid down his fork. I owe you an apology too. I looked surprised. For what? I noticed awkward moments. He shrugged awkwardly. I always assumed they weren't my business. Susan nodded. So did I. There it was. Another truth. Silence protects patterns far longer than bad intentions do. Lily quietly reached for another piece of bread. She looked noticeably lighter. Almost relieved. Children don't enjoy keeping secrets. Especially secrets that force them to choose between adults they love. Rachel barely touched her food. Every few minutes, she looked toward me as though searching for the right words. Eventually she spoke. Can I ask you something? Of course. When did you first realize? I took a sip of water. The Christmas dinner. She frowned. 3 years ago. Yes. What happened? I smiled faintly. You gave everyone homemade ornaments. She nodded slowly. I remember. Everyone's ornament had their name. Another nod. Mine didn't. Rachel's face slowly changed. So, it was blank. I thought. She stopped. You thought I wouldn't notice. She whispered no. I thought I'd run out of letters. I believed her. Probably because intentions had become mixed together over time. Some incidents had likely been accidents. Others had not. The problem was that once someone repeatedly feels excluded, even genuine mistakes become painful. That is how trust disappears. Not all at once. One unanswered question at a time. Daniel leaned forward. Why didn't you ever say anything? I smiled. Would you have believed me? Nobody answered. Because everyone already knew the truth. If I had complained about missing desserts or forgotten invitations, I would probably have sounded petty, oversensitive, difficult. Small patterns are almost impossible to explain while they're happening. Only afterward do they become obvious. Rachel slowly nodded. I probably would have defended myself. You would have. And I would have believed I was right. You would have. She sighed deeply. I don't like hearing that. I know. But sometimes honesty sounds unpleasant. The conversation drifted elsewhere after that. We spoke about Lily's upcoming science competition, Mark's retirement plans, Susan's volunteer work at the library. For the first time in years, nobody redirected conversations away from me whenever someone asked about work. Yet something interesting happened. People asked one question. I answered. Then we naturally moved on. Exactly as healthy conversations should. Rachel watched that happen quietly. I think she finally realized something. Nobody had ever tried to make lunch revolve around me. That had existed only inside her fears. After dessert, I quietly washed my own plate. Rachel approached me at the sink. You don't have to do that. I know. I usually don't let guests clean. I know. She stood beside me without speaking. Finally she asked, would you ever trust me again? I looked at the soap bubbles floating across the warm water. Trust. People often imagine trust as a light switch. On, off, gone forever. Real trust is closer to a garden. Neglect it, and weeds appear. Care for it, and growth returns slowly. Not overnight, but steadily. I don't know yet, I answered honestly. Her eyes filled again. I appreciate the honesty. I think that's the only place to start. She nodded. I agreed. Before leaving that afternoon, Lily walked me to my car. She carried the apple pie Rachel had forgotten to serve. I found this. I laughed. So that's where it disappeared. Lily smiled for the first time all day. It smelled too good to waste. I opened the car door. She suddenly hugged me. Aunt Emily. Yes. Are you mad at Mom forever? Children ask questions adults avoid. I hugged her back. No. Really. No. But forgiveness and pretending are different things. She looked confused. I can forgive her. That doesn't mean today never happened. She thought about that. Then nodded slowly. I think I understand. You will someday. She watched as I placed the pie carefully on the passenger seat. Just before I drove away, she waved. Not dramatically. Just happily. It felt genuine. For the first time in quite a while. The following Tuesday, something unexpected happened. Rachel called me. Not to apologize again. Not to explain herself. She asked a simple question. Do you have time for coffee? I hesitated. Then answered. Yes. We met at a small cafe halfway between our neighborhoods. Neither of us ordered much. She looked nervous. I've been thinking. I figured. I realized something embarrassing. What? I don't actually know very much about your business. I smiled. You've never asked. I know. I was afraid if I asked, everyone would admire you more. She shook her head at herself. It sounds ridiculous now. It sounds human. She looked surprised. I expected you to call it selfish. Sometimes people become selfish because they're afraid. Fear doesn't make it acceptable. No, but understanding fear helps prevent repeating it. She wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. When you were building your company, and were you scared? I laughed softly. Every day. She blinked. I thought successful people weren't afraid. They're afraid constantly. They just keep working. For nearly 2 hours we talked. Not about the hidden lunch. Not about the money. About life. Clients. Parents. Marriage. Regret. Dreams we never admitted aloud. When we stood to leave, she looked noticeably calmer. I spent years competing with someone who wasn't competing with me. I smiled. That must have been exhausting. It was. 3 weeks later, Daniel invited everyone for another Sunday lunch. This time he cooked. Rachel insisted on helping. When I arrived, something immediately caught my attention. 7 plates. 7 glasses. 7 cloth napkins. 1 place card at every seat. Including mine. It wasn't elaborate. It wasn't expensive. It simply showed intention. Rachel noticed me looking. I counted 3 times. We both laughed. The tension between us hadn't disappeared. But something healthier had begun replacing it. Effort. Halfway through lunch, Lily stood up. I made something. She disappeared upstairs. Then returned carrying a framed photograph. It showed our entire family taken years earlier. Only this version was different. She had carefully written every person's name beneath the picture. Including mine. Centered perfectly. Rachel quietly looked at it. Then at Lily. Then at me. I'm glad she notices details. I answered softly. So am I. Sometimes the smallest corrections carry the greatest meaning. Not because they erase the past. Because they acknowledge it. That evening, after everyone went home, my phone rang. It was one of my senior partners. We got the call. What call? The State Business Leadership Council. I stopped walking. What about them? They've selected you. For what? The Lifetime Community Leadership Award. I closed my eyes. There were more than 12,000 eligible business owners across the state. Only one person received that recognition each year. The ceremony would be held 6 weeks later. Attendance by invitation only. I thanked him quietly. Then ended the call. Standing alone in my driveway, I thought about Mother's words again. Families show love when something is missing. Perhaps she had been right. But I was beginning to learn something else. Sometimes life removes your place at one table, only to prepare a seat at another where your worth is already known. The invitation arrived 9 days later. It came in a thick cream-colored envelope with my name printed in dark blue lettering. No flashy design. No gold trim. Just quiet elegance. Inside was a formal invitation confirming the ceremony, the schedule for the evening, and one sentence that made me read it twice. Each recipient may invite 6 guests. I smiled. 6. Such an ordinary number. Yet somehow it felt significant. I placed the invitation on my kitchen table and stared at it for several minutes. Then I made a list. The first name was easy. Daniel. The second took a little longer. Rachel. Not because I had forgotten what happened. Because I wanted my decision to come from peace rather than obligation. The third name was Lily. The fourth was Margaret, the retired teacher who had become my very first client 20 years earlier. The fifth was Carlos, the restaurant owner whose business had survived because he refused to give up. The sixth was Olivia, my firm's youngest accountant, 25 years old and brilliant beyond her own confidence. It wasn't a list based on status. It was a list based on people who had shared part of the journey. When I called Daniel, he answered immediately. Everything okay? Better than okay. What happened? I've been invited to receive an award. There was a pause. What kind of award? The State Community Leadership Award. His voice became quiet. Emily. Yes, I'm proud of you. He had never said those words before. Not because he wasn't proud. Because some families assume love doesn't need to be spoken. Sometimes they're wrong. Sometimes people need to hear it. A few minutes later, Rachel came onto the phone. I heard. You did. Are you sure you want me there? I looked out the kitchen window before answering. Yes. Even after. Especially after. She didn't speak for several seconds. Then she whispered. Thank you. During the following weeks, work remained busy. Quarterly reports. Client meetings. Tax planning. Hiring interviews. Life refused to pause simply because recognition was approaching. I actually preferred it that way. Awards last one evening. Character is built on ordinary Tuesdays. One Thursday afternoon, Olivia knocked on my office door. Do you have a minute? Always. She stepped inside carrying a folder. I wanted your opinions. She handed me a proposal she had prepared for improving fraud detection for small businesses. It was thoughtful, detailed, innovative. You should present this at next month's conference. Her eyes widened. I couldn't. Why not? I'm too inexperienced. I smiled. How many fraud investigations have you completed? She thought for a moment. 42. And how many have I completed? She laughed. I don't know. 41. She blinked. You've actually done fewer. I delegated one to you. She stared at me. I never realized. Exactly. Sometimes confidence isn't missing because people lack ability. It's missing because nobody has shown them the numbers. She left my office smiling. Watching young professionals grow had become my favorite part of success. Not the profits. Not the awards. Watching someone begin believing in themselves. That never grew old. The evening of the ceremony finally arrived. The ballroom overlooked the river. Round tables. Soft music. Simple flowers. Nothing extravagant. Everything tasteful. Rachel looked nervous the moment she stepped inside. I feel underdressed. You look wonderful. She laughed. I think you're just being kind. No, Lily picked the dress, didn't she? Rachel smiled. How did you know? Because she's developing excellent taste. Lily grinned proudly. Daniel leaned toward me. I've never seen this many business leaders in one room. Neither had I. People from every industry filled the ballroom. Doctors, engineers, teachers, farm owners, manufacturers, volunteers. The award wasn't about wealth. It was about long-term contribution. That mattered to me. As we found our table, several people stopped to greet me. Some were former clients. Others had worked with me on community projects. Each conversation lasted only a minute or two. Rachel watched quietly. Then she leaned toward Daniel. You were right. About what? People don't admire Emily because she talks about herself. They admire her because she helped them. Daniel squeezed her hand gently. I've been trying to tell you that for years. I know. The ceremony began exactly at 7 o'clock. Several awards were presented before mine. Volunteers, teachers, healthcare workers. Every story reminded me that success has countless different faces. Finally, the host stepped to the podium. Our final honoree has spent more than 2 decades helping small businesses remain honest, sustainable, and financially healthy. A large screen behind the stage displayed photographs from different years of my career. The tiny office with second-hand furniture. Our first team picture. Scholarship presentations. Community workshops. Volunteer tax clinics. Pictures I had forgotten existed. The narrator continued. Over the past 22 years, her firm has helped preserve hundreds of local jobs by guiding struggling businesses through financial crises, with integrity rather than shortcuts. I heard Lily whisper, "That's Aunt Emily." Rachel smiled at her. "I know." The host continued. "But perhaps her greatest achievement cannot be measured in dollars. More than 60 young accountants trained under her leadership have gone on to establish successful careers throughout the state." I looked toward Olivia. She was already crying. The speaker smiled. "Please welcome this year's recipient. Is Emily Carter." The applause rose slowly. Not explosive. Warm, steady, respectful. As I walked toward the stage, I caught sight of my family. Daniel was standing. Lily was clapping so enthusiastically that she almost dropped the program booklet. Rachel stood too. There were tears in her eyes. Not tears of embarrassment. Not tears of guilt. Something different. Recognition. Not only of me. Of herself. Of what she had almost allowed jealousy to destroy. After accepting the award, I stood behind the podium. I had prepared a speech. 3 pages. Carefully written. I folded it once. Then placed it inside my pocket. Instead, I spoke from memory. When people hear about success, they often imagine extraordinary moments. A promotion. And